Welcome, everyone, to Always United's Impact Midlands. Today, our topic is going to be homelessness and affordable housing. If you are on this broadcast, please let us know by putting your name in the chat room, and also that you are a member of Always United. Please note that as well. At this time, I'm going to introduce our very capable Cindy Cox, our Activities Committee Chairman, and let her introduce our guest presenters today. So take it away, Cindy.
Hi, thanks, Phil. Hello, everyone. So glad you could join us today for our first Impact Midlands. This is a series that we will be doing to equip our Always United members to be better advocates for United Way. And we'll do this by letting us hear more about the issues that are ongoing in our community that United Way is involved with, and the partner agencies and programs that are working on those issues. So today, as Phil mentioned, we're starting off with an area that falls in the financial stability issue area for United Way, which is housing and homelessness. And joining us today, we have two fantastic speakers and experts to join us today. First, I'm going to introduce Dr. Lila Anna Sauls. Lila Ann leads Homeless No More as its chief executive officer and works to implement the organization's ambitious strategic plan. Lila Anna joined Homeless No More and its primary program, which is St. Lawrence Place, in 2005 and became CEO in 2007. So with over 25 years in nonprofit leadership, Lila Anna serves on numerous boards and committees, including the City of Columbia's Affordable Housing Task Force and South Carolina Association for Community Economic Development. Lila Anna has spent years working in schools throughout the Midlands through the McKinney-Vento programs. This is to make sure homeless and at-risk children are given the tools necessary to achieve. And she was elected to the Richland School District 1 Board of Commissioners in 2016 and completed her term there in 2020. She's an adjunct faculty member at Columbia College and a guest lecturer for the Schools of Social Work and Education at the University of South Carolina. Lila Anna and her team have presented nationally on the programs they have created and implemented at Homeless No More. And we always say, last but not least, she and her husband, Brad, are the proud parents of 5 incredible boys. Let me just say, I have 1 boy, so 5 incredible boys just gets a wow, okay? So Lila Anna, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. And I probably should have I hate bios, y'all. Especially, so I just got my doctorate and the whole doctor. I'm thinking, I should not have put that on there.
No, you should never put that on there.
But so please know what my bio used to end with is she has 5 incredible boys and about 100 others at Homeless No More, because everything I tend to do is driven by those children. And I would offer that probably most of the people on this call are the same way. So just know that the boys are the most important part. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Lila Anna. Also joining us today is Andy Pope from United Way of the Midlands. Hi, Andy. Since 2016, Andy has served as the Homeless Coalition Director at United Way of the Midlands. He works with a great team there to annually bring in over $3 million to support homeless service providers across a 13-county area of the Midlands. Prior to joining United Way, he was a professor in the Arnold School of Public Health at the University of South Carolina, where he taught evaluation methods and community health, plus led a federal evaluation of a policy, systems, and environmental change project. Andy's passion is working to address racial and ethnic inequities that exist in health and housing. Andy's married to Holly, and they have 2 children, Ella, who's 4, and Abram, who is 2. So Andy, thank you for joining us today.
Sure, Cindy. And you may end up hearing my children in the background.
Okay.
So which is fine. I'm sure they would love to say hello as well. But thanks for asking me to be a part of it. And I really appreciate Always United realizing the importance of affordable housing and homelessness in the Midlands. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you. So am I. And we will have a conversation. Please, those of you watching, put your questions in the comment section, and we will do our best to get all of them answered. We'll be going until about 12:45 with the discussion and question and answer. So go ahead and get them in there now. To kick us off, Lila Anna, just give us a description of your agency and the programs that Homeless No More is involved with, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. And I think Adina is going to share a really helpful graphic. So we are what we call a continuum for homeless families with children throughout the Midlands. And I have 5 boys, so I talk in sports analogies. So if you can imagine playing on a baseball field and you break a bone so badly, step 1 is family shelter. So these are the families who will come in out of cars, who are living on the street, who literally have nowhere to go on that day. These families don't have ID. Their kids may or may not be enrolled in school. They may or may not have their medicine, etc. You break that bone, you're on the baseball field, you're with us for 30 days, and we put that bone in a cast. But it is basically stabilizing families. Step 2 is St. Lawrence Place. St. Lawrence Place is a 2-year program. We use the term transitional shelter, whereas families at family shelter have a small room. They get 3 meals a day. They share a bathroom. At St. Lawrence Place, they're a little more independent. So you have a small apartment, but you're cooking your own meals. You have housekeeping inspections, but they're once a month because, again, you're with us for 2 years. You have a case manager in both programs, but at family shelter, you are dealing with how to find the bus route. At St. Lawrence Place, you are dealing with, I'm making minimum wage, working 20 hours a week. How do I increase my education so I can make $14 an hour and work 40 hours a week? Our third step is Live Oak Place, and that is the affordable housing arm of Homeless No More. So at Live Oak Place, it is landlord tenant. So that means the lease our families have at Live Oak Place look like the lease anyone would have renting elsewhere. They are affordable. They are not voucher driven. So we call that income based. So you will have a parent with 3 children making $17,000 a year, possibly living next to a teacher with 3 children making more than that. It is what we call a mixed use model. And then we have some scattered site houses throughout the county, and they're in rent tolerant neighborhoods. I tell people that our first houses we bought under the arm of Live Oak Place are a couple of blocks away from the first home I owned in Columbia. Right now we have 32 units, and we have on the drawing board 3 other projects, which will increase, honestly, by 3 over the next 2 years. All of these services have what we call wraparound programs. So for example, we have a full children's program. When the children were all e-learning, we had an e-learning academy. We have an after school program for all the children on all the campuses, summer camp, winter break camp, teen life skills. We are truly someone who works with the entire family. We continue to be the only shelter system in the Midlands that works with boys over the age of 12, as well as fathers. So a family for us can look like traditional couples. It could be same-sex couples. It could be a grandparent with grandchildren. It could be a single mother, a single father. Our families are coming from domestic violence. They're coming from evictions, you name it. But our goal has been and will continue to be to keep that entire family together. The fourth is what we call the community bridge. And like so many other things in our lives, COVID has kind of put a soft spot stop to this. We actually were calling together all the nonprofits in the area who work with at-risk and homeless families once a month. And we talked about anything from transportation to healthcare, food deserts. And it was named after the Knights of the Round Table, because we would open the meeting, but we were not in charge. And the conversation was guided by the outreach workers and the ground troops who dealt with these families. And we always took money off the table. So, we couldn't talk about who was getting what from the United Way or any other foundation. It was truly to talk about what we could do for those we serve. Just as we're meeting today, we have gone to more of a virtual option for our meetings, and we're hoping to start pulling people back together in the same room first of the year. That is us in a nutshell. But what I like to say is family shelter is when you break your arm, put it in a cast. St. Lawrence Place is when you're going to rehab and learning how to use it again. Live Oak Place is when you're back on the baseball field and you're pitching strikes. So there you go.
Great. Thank you, Lila Anna. That's a good visual and good description. So appreciate that. Andy, tell us about the program you're involved with.
Sure. As I said before, and as you may know, I'm an employee at United Way of the Midlands. However, my primary focus is working with what's known as the Midlands Area Consortium for the Homeless. And what that is a 13-county federally designated continuum of care. And so kind of the housing and urban development designates different areas as continuums of care. And United Way is a collaborative applicant for MOC, which is its own 501c3. So we have a few staff at United Way who works as liaisons, works with the Midlands Area Consortium for the Homeless to organize efforts that are related to homelessness in the 13 counties. In the 13 counties, all 6 counties that are part of United Way of the Midlands are part of those 13 counties. In addition, there's from Aiken and Allendale up to York County, Lancaster, and Calhoun, and then anywhere in between as it relates to, Chester, and then anywhere in between as it relates to those counties. So what the continuum of care does, you heard kind of as it was introduced, we do a couple of different things. One is we have a homeless management information system, which we at United Way serve as the lead for. So any homeless service providers across the 13 counties, really across the state of South Carolina, put their information into HMIS is what it's known for, Homeless Management Information System. So we can better coordinate and organize services for those who are experiencing homelessness. In addition, each year there's an opportunity to submit for funding. So we work with organizations across the 13 counties to submit funding to what's called the Continuum of Care program competition. And that brings in a little over $3 million to the 13 counties. The majority of those are focused in Richland County. And that's really to provide permanent supportive housing, which is long-term housing for individuals who have disabilities and who have been chronically homeless. And then we also provide funds for rapid rehousing, which is more short-term rental assistance for up to 24 months that helps individuals get stabilized and then be able to take over the rent on their own. So that's one part of it. Then we also work closely with what's called the Emergency Solutions Grant. And those funds are specific. It can be used for outreach to reach out to those who are experiencing homelessness, for emergency shelter, as what Lila Anna mentioned with her program at Family Shelter, or the local organization's Transitions, who has a large emergency shelter in the Midlands. It also can be used for homeless prevention. So those who are maybe behind on rent or need additional assistance with utilities in order to maintain their housing. And then it also can be used for rapid rehousing. And over the last year, due to some of the Affordable Care Act, Affordable Care Act, back to my public health days, for some of the funds related to COVID that have been set aside from the federal government, there's been a little over $5 million that has been brought into the 13 counties to provide services around that. The MOC has about anywhere between 30 organizations, a little more than 30 organizations. Homeless No More is a very strong partner in the Midlands Area Consortium for the Homeless. And we come together, we have quarterly meetings. COVID's put a damper on those a little bit. And then at United Way, as part of that, we also, just to give you a sense of some of the activities that are going on for individuals and families who are experiencing homeless, we have something called case conferencing. We come together 2 times a month with all of the service providers across the 13 counties and talk about services that are available, resources that are available, and then we also get very in depth about a specific case, individual, or family to try to address their unique needs. That happens 2 times a month. We do it for individuals and families in one meeting. We also have a specific meeting related to veterans to address veterans homelessness, and then related to youth. In youth, whatever I discuss youth as it relates to homelessness is anywhere between 18 to 24 years of age. Everyone has a different definition of youth, but as it relates to federal funding, youth really starts at 18, although there can be some funds that are used for 17-year-olds. So we also partner with the local housing authorities. I'll be talking, I think, in a little bit about some of the unique programs that are coming out that are being used to address some of the needs in the area for those who are experiencing homelessness. I'll be talking about that. And then the final thing is the most important thing is kind of what Lila Anna mentioned, and they do a great job of bringing partners together. And then at United Way, one of our critical features is to bring organizations together who can provide solutions to the problems that we see around the area. So whether that's homelessness or affordable housing, and that's what we do with the Midlands Area Consortium for the Homeless, is bring the providers who are providing the services, who are the experts in providing services to individuals and families, and work specifically with them to make sure those services are coordinated, organized, and then the individuals who are seeking services get the appropriate referral to the services that are available, because everyone has somewhat unique needs. They may all be homeless, but they have different circumstances that we help assist them in getting to the right place in order to receive the services that they need. As you heard Lila Anna mention, they have a kind of a no barrier shelter regardless of family composition. Not all of our family shelters are that way across the 13 counties. So we just help work with, it's called coordinated entry, those individuals and families who are seeking services to make sure they get referred to the right place. So that's just a little bit of what we do. There's a lot of federal reporting that I get the joy of being a part of, but I think what most people are interested in, I believe, for this conversation is really organizing providers and how those resources are used, and we help guide that as part of the team that I work with. So I think that's all for that. I believe other will come out as we continue to discuss and have a conversation.
Okay, well, thanks, Andy. And as we continue that conversation, let's stick with you, Andy, for right now. And this is a more general question, but how would you describe the current climate of housing in the Midlands?
You know, that's kind of a loaded question for a specific reason. I in preparation, I Googled housing climate in the Midlands, and the very first thing that came up was this. It said the real estate market in Columbia and the entire state of South Carolina is simmering. But there's a big difference between housing market, affordable housing, and real estate market. And I think that's something that I want to make sure that people understand. With that, one thing United Way Association of South Carolina puts out, we partner with, is the self-sufficiency standard. I encourage everyone to go to the United Way Association of South Carolina website, look at the self-sufficiency standard to see what it means to have a livable wage in the area. I put in just my composition for this, and in Richland County, 2 adults, me and my wife, 1 infant, and 1 preschooler. And for us, in order to have a livable wage, which includes childcare, healthcare, food, transportation, miscellaneous, we have to make $64,397. I don't want to make it seem like we're destitute. We're not. We are very fortunate with what we have. But in 2020, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. Due to COVID, we can't put our kids in childcare. So she's unable to work, and so we're down to 1 income, and fortunately we're saving money by not having childcare. But there's so many people out there who are on the margins, and there's so little affordable housing that's available. United Way of the Midlands, I think it was mentioned earlier, did community conversations across the 6 counties that United Way serves, and it really, I don't want to say at the top of the list, but at almost every conversation, affordable and safe housing was one of the primary things that came up. So And really, I wasn't in this field at this point in time, but 2015 with the flood was the first indication of how limited affordable housing is in the Midlands for those who are just on the margins, who may be making minimum wage or just above minimum wage. And the flood took away so many different affordable housing units that could be available, and they weren't replaced with more affordable housing units. It gave renters an opportunity to go up in their rent. And COVID has kind of done that as well, as people have not been able to maintain their leases and or mortgages. It's allowed people to go up in rent, which has made it even more difficult for people who have limited income to find affordable, safe housing. So people end up doubled up. People end up living with other families. Many people living out of their cars. So while the real estate market looks really, really good right now, and I'm sure many of you are excited about that. I'm excited about that because my property is going up. The housing market as it relates to affordable housing does not look good. And we really have a critical need for affordable housing in the Midlands. And that's across every county, but none more significant than here in Columbia.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. Lila Ann, you're actually a provider of affordable housing, so I'm eager to hear sort of your assessment of the housing climate in the Midlands.
You know, we are, and when we expanded from St. Lawrence Place, as we had been known for decades, to Homeless No More and included the affordable housing, it was based on, I kind of warned everybody, I talk in stories, this idea of my case managers coming to me and saying St. Lawrence Place families are doing everything they're supposed to be doing. They're working 40 hours a week, but there is nowhere for them to go that is safe, clean, and affordable. That predated the flood. It was early 2016. And at that point, I went to the board and said, we need to do something about this. And my board is very strategic, very focused. And they said, great, where's your data? So we actually worked with USC to do a report on homelessness in specific regards to families. And we, at that time, found that if you put 4,000 units of affordable housing down tomorrow, wave your magic wand, they'd be gone in 24 hours. That was the need before the flood. So to Andy's point, the flood came along, wiped out a lot of what did exist that was already substandard. Let me be very clear. And as people chose to rebuild, they chose to rebuild bigger and better, or they didn't rebuild. So that number has continued to grow. And another study for you to kind of, when you're bored, SC State Housing has an incredible summary county by county of the need for affordable housing. So we started developing affordable housing. At that point, we run at 100%. We have had one almost eviction in all of those years. And when I say almost, it never went to magistrate's court because we believe in keeping relationships with the tenants. So you kind of know up front if something's happening. But Columbia Housing's new plan is beautiful, but it is a net gain of 0 affordable housing units. So when you talk about this idea of vouchers, a family can use a voucher, but only if there is housing that will allow them to use the voucher. So there is an incredible need, and that is for our at-risk population. So what we tend to forget, to Andy's point again, it is 30% of your income. Your income, my income, an at-risk family's income. So you can be housing poor and have 2 incomes, 3 children, and 2 stable jobs. So it's also this idea of how do you make sure you have housing stock that everybody can afford, not just those who are at risk of homelessness. Our Live Oak Place properties, because of the staggered income requirements, kind of fits the need across the board up until about 80% of what we consider market income. But I think we tend to get bogged down in this idea that affordable housing is just for almost homeless families or people. It's not. It's in our area, and Andy, I love it when I quote numbers, but I'm off by 100 plus or minus. I think an average rent for a 3-bedroom apartment is over $1,200 right now. I have friends who I know who are renting houses for $3,000 a month, which is more than my mortgage payment. So it is this idea of getting the community at a place where when they hear affordable housing, they're not thinking not in my backyard. They're not thinking, oh, that's only poor people. The truth of the matter is this is affecting everyone. And, you know, a lot of it's been talked about right now with the downtown areas. You have to find a balance between student housing, between young professional housing, between at risk. And it has to be a mix where you're not creating pockets of poverty. So, and I know that I was kind of spitballing with that answer, but I think the bottom line is, Cindy, is that if you were to wave your magic wand and come up with about 4,000 units, they'd be full. Yeah. That is how high the need is.
Yeah. Wow. All right, Andy, I'm going to talk to us a little bit about, I know Mock has been facilitating the emergency housing voucher program, kind of following the ups and downs of the eviction moratorium that was related to the COVID response to the pandemic. Can you talk to us a little bit about that program? What's the impact been? There's been a lot of, you know, stories about, you know, people getting evicted and the money hasn't been spent. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot within that question. First, I'll talk about the emergency housing voucher program, which is an excellent program that I was really excited about. This is something that HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, authorized tons of resources for. It essentially provides Section 8 vouchers specific to those who are experiencing homelessness or those who are at risk of homelessness, which is an incredible change for HUD. HUD typically requires you to be literally homeless, living in an emergency shelter, living unsheltered, which for many of the McKinney-Vento families, for many of the individuals who stay doubled up, they end up not having access to some of those vouchers. So these are like Section 8 vouchers. And just for a little context, just within Columbia Housing, they have close to 4,000 people on their waiting list for their Section 8 vouchers. So in Columbia Housing was given 84 vouchers. So if you think there's 4,000 people, close to 4,000 on their waiting list, they were given 84 vouchers, which is excellent. And it's specific to those who are experiencing homelessness or at risk, which is really, really good. So they can't use their waiting list to fill these. In addition, SC Housing is overseeing 112 vouchers in Lexington and 16 vouchers in Fairfield. And then there's additional vouchers, about 36 additional vouchers in other counties that we work with within the Midlands Area Consortium for the Homeless. Just to give you some numbers about that program, we created a screening questionnaire for individuals to apply within 24 hours. We had about 300 completed screening questionnaires, and almost every one of those individuals was eligible for the services. And this is within 24 hours with almost no advertisement of the program because we knew the need was going to be so great. As of September 23rd, sorry, I didn't go back and look for the most update. There's been 146 completed referral packets. There's been 37 vouchers issued, and 43 people are waiting for the orientation, which there's a big orientation today, to be able to issue their voucher. Of those 37 who have had a voucher for a few weeks now, one is leased up. And the reason why they're leased up, or the reason why there's so many who aren't, is there's not units that they can move into that's affordable or that will accept a voucher from an individual. So it's an excellent program. It will help tremendously. Transitions has done an incredible job of mobilizing their team to make sure that anyone who's in the shelter that's eligible for those services, they provide referrals for, which is great. However, the big problem is going to be finding affordable units that will accept the Section 8 voucher. They have to pass what's known as HQS inspections, which is a federal inspection, which is not always easy. Lila Anna mentioned livable conditions, and it's really not a high standard for HQS inspections, but it rules out a lot of different units that can be available for individuals. And so the program is great. We have a lot of referrals. It's going to help a lot of people when our providers and the housing authorities are able to identify units. There is some money within that program to incentivize landlords. We need a lot more incentivization, if that's a word, of landlords for them to rent again to individuals to make sure that they feel comfortable doing so. And then bringing the eviction moratorium into this, it's there's pluses and negatives on both sides of the eviction moratorium that I've seen. There was a lot of resources that were available to mitigate the impact of eviction that weren't being accessed. And one of the reasons for that, it's not the only reason, was because the eviction moratorium continued to be extended. For many people, it needed to be extended, but until the shoe drops, many people aren't going to request those resources or go through the process of getting those resources. Well, what has happened is most of the federal programs only allow up to 6 months of rent in arrears. Well, the problem now is that many people have more than 6 months of rent in arrears. So even if they were able to access some of the resources, it's not going to be enough to be able to maintain their housing. So the eviction moratorium extended. As someone who's a huge advocate for affordable housing, huge advocate for what individuals go through as it relates to that, I was conflicted at different times as the moratorium continued to get extended. I think it's incredibly purposeful and needed, but it has created a situation where the available resources may not be able to help as many people because of the window of time that maybe they have not been paying their rent. And if you look at the number of individuals who lost their job, combine that with the difficulty in hiring or the number of organizations who had to cut workforce or couldn't remain open due to COVID, it really creates such a difficult situation. And then we already were short affordable housing to begin with. So many, don't want to go back to affordable housing, many landlords, and I understand that's their way they make money, are requiring a certain amount of income or requiring a certain amount of deposit in order to do this. Well, the people who are in the margin are not able to meet those standards to get some of the things that are available. So it really comes down to looking at different policies as it relates to affordable housing. I kind of went all over the map for that. Hopefully some of those points were helpful. I think the underlying message is, and you're going to hear this a lot, is there's not enough affordable housing units. What Lila Anna talked about with a 3-bedroom and what people are renting for, I believe if you look at what's known as FMR, essentially the rate that you could use a voucher for, or we could use some of our resources for a 3-bedrooms around a little over $800. So you'd have to find a 3-bedroom unit for a little over $800 in order to be able to use federal subsidies to support that. You can't find 3-bedroom units for a little over $800 a month. So anyways, I'm sure Lila Anna has some thoughts about that as well, but with the families that she's worked with and been a part of. So
yeah, Lila Anna, please.
No, it's interesting because I think what you hear from a lot of us is what Andy said as far as being torn about the eviction moratorium being extended. So we had data from years ago that said when a family receives a short-term voucher or rental assistance, no matter the length, 3, 6, 18 months, at the end of that time, the family does not understand that it's ended. Don't know why. The quantitative data tells us this. We don't have the qualitative data necessary, except we know that families come from a place of crisis most of the time. And if you don't have wraparound services to go with that assistance, they don't learn how to put out fires. So again, that's qualitative versus quantitative, but it was a good mix. So we knew going into this that the families we served at the end of the moratorium, whether it was going to be a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month, were not going to understand, A, it was going to end, and B, they were going to owe back rent. That piece of information was not communicated effectively for those we serve. Now, I will tell you, if you tell me that, I probably am going to digest it and have it in the back of my mind. But even I probably will think, I'll deal with it. I'll deal with it. I'll deal with it. So what we're finding is that as the moratorium is ended, the families have no plan. They're not equipped to fill out any online applications, etc. That's why we saw that horrific 11% of resources being used after we had months of the funds coming down for rental assistance. However, what is happening now is those that make the guidelines in Washington are understanding that not everybody has a copy of their lease. Not everybody can get forms signed by their landlord. So they're again, to Andy's point, they're relaxing some of the guidelines. And then you have city, county, and state who are in charge of getting these funds out. They're now working with the nonprofits. So my case managers now know how to go online, fill out the form with the client next to them, whether it's one of our clients here, whether it's someone that we've had referred to us. So they're allowing for that assistance, and they're allowing us to be more deliberate in our help, for lack of a better word. The one piece that is still missing, in my opinion, is this landlord piece. So if we can convince the landlords, two things. One is it's easier to help this family gather the information so we can get this back rent to you. Number one, help. Number two, take a chance on the family that you've had for 18 months, who've done the best they can, even if it's only 6 months, because chances are if you evict, you're going to get another family in who is in the same situation, has been evicted and is now looking for new housing, but you don't know this family. So kind of going back to that relationship piece. And I will tell you, we had 2 families that, because we fell into the moratorium as a landlord, and it was very much talking with them and immediately helping them fill out the paperwork. And in the beginning, that paperwork, I'm not sure I could have really gotten it together quickly.
Yeah.
It was intense. So I think the money is out there, and I think people are finally figuring out how to get it into the hands of the renters and the landlords. My fear is that a lot of them have gone month to month, so it's technically not an eviction. Their leases just aren't being renewed, and again, they're doubling up. They're making do because the housing is just not out there to move to next.
And their leases aren't being renewed. Even if they are being renewed, they're being renewed at a higher rate for rent, which is creating a difficulty for those who are currently in there. And I do want to say one thing. I was looking at the time, and hopefully I say this correctly. As it said in my bio, one thing that I'm very interested in is kind of the racial and ethnic disparities that exist. And another incredibly huge barrier to individuals is those who've been incarcerated. So those who've been arrested, to be able to access housing if you have something on your record is very difficult. And the disproportionate rates at which African Americans and minorities are being incarcerated has made a huge gap in their ability to access housing. One, their ability to access employment and jobs, and 2, their ability to access affordable housing once they have employment and jobs. So and I completely get it. That I say all the time, I work with Lila Anna, and we are responsible for making sure that certain federal guidelines are followed. And I tell the partners we work with, if it was me, I wouldn't want to do this either. But sometimes there's just the right things that you have to do. And looking at how individuals are chosen or what's being approved for individuals to obtain a unit is something that's very, very important to me in order to kind of eliminate some of the gaps and disparities that exist. I probably could say more about that, but
well, maybe some of our audience questions will let you do just that, Andy.
All right.
How about that? We've got some good questions coming in, so we're going to move to those. I see a question. Adina, are you going to put these up on the screen, or I'm going to read one here from Hayes. Okay, this is from Hayes. In many discussions about housing, there are concerns about the lack of affordable housing, even for young professionals, such as people who are single, teachers, staff of nonprofits, etc. Is there any organization that is addressing this issue and helping such individuals find housing they can afford? Good question. We touched on that with the self-sufficiency standard.
So I'll jump in because I saw this question yesterday, and I was I kept thinking it's interesting to me that when we're on the Affordable Housing Task Force calls, we get bogged down in what we're going to call this. Is it affordable, attainable, workforce? Mm-hmm. And we get bogged down in, is it for at-risk, homeless, et cetera. And I think what you will hear from most of us who deal in the housing aspect of it is, I don't care what you call it, and I don't care what 30% of your income is. That is affordable housing. So whether you work for the nonprofit, you're a public servant, you're single with only one income, it is just as important to have that affordable housing as it is for one of my at-risk homeless families. However, I'd offer that there aren't nonprofits specifically doing just affordable housing for any segment of the population. You have affordable housing developers, and you have organizations like mine who deal with different components. But until we get the stock, it doesn't matter if you have a nonprofit whose lone job is to help someone find. So it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario. The NAACP has housing navigators out there right now, and their job is to be on the ground and help those facing eviction find housing. You can call us and we can kind of offer, but to Hayes's point, there's not a nonprofit specific to the demographics he's pointing. But again, I'd offer there's not really a catch-all for any particular demographic. And you can go business minded and say there are landlord associations and home builders have a marketing council, but that has never been their reason for existing. We are in a new place as a community where we have to kind of come to grips with the idea that affordable housing is not just for poor people, and the need is not just there for at-risk people. And we've got to get the information out to everyone, but we've got to get the units built first.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Lila Anna. We have a question from Fran Myers, I believe. So the question is, how does this program benefit a family who is trying to build their credit back up to lead to home ownership? Is the service reported for them to help? Andy, this question came in while you were talking, I believe. So I don't know if this is related to the rental programs or Lila Anna, either one of you that want to take this question.
So Andy, you go. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Lila Anna.
No, so it was, I want to say I saw it yesterday that they are now starting to direct more relief to home ownership as far as assistance with mortgages. What that means, if I'm understanding the question correctly, there are programs within nonprofits who are now going to have to shift their focus to credit repair. We usually include that in our life skill programming. We'll bring in partners from banks or other agencies to kind of guide our families. I think you're going to have a concentrated effort for all of these families who have faced eviction, whether they've gotten assistance or not, because I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but an eviction follows you. It's like a record. It's like if you have a DUI or something. So if you ever try to get housing again, that is on your record. They pull a rental report. So we know that we're going to have to now kind of focus on this with those who have faced eviction or were not evicted but fell behind and left, and they call for references just like a job. So it's a matter of how do you kind of expunge those records? How do you help them come up with a plan so it doesn't follow them? Does that kind of answer the question? And those programs exist within nonprofits. Like I know Transitions, works with their clients. I know we work with ours. Cooperative Ministry. I think a lot of them do it. I think it's just going to probably our numbers are going to increase as to who needs the services.
Yeah, and there's incredible work going on at Richland Library with their social workers as well,
Exactly.
assisting individuals in building their credit. And I think anytime you're able to get someone stably housed and in an affordable unit, it allows them to use the resources to cover other debt that they may have that could be bringing down their credit as well. So I think as much as we can get people in a unit that, as Lila Anna talked about, is 30% of their income, that frees their income up to be able to cover other expenses that they may have. I can tell you, if it's me and there's a choice between paying a bill or making sure my son and daughter receive food or have warm enough clothing or whatever it may be, I'm always going to err on taking care of my family. And many people get villainized for doing what it takes to take care of their family, and having to make the difficult choice because either not having a livable wage or having expenses that are overly inflated for reasons that they don't have control over. And those are things that bring down credit and make it difficult to access home ownership in the future, which is, I know, the goal of everyone, but having a safe, affordable place is the first step to that.
All right, well, we're near the end of our time, but I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 more questions real quick. So y'all cooperate with me and we can get this done. We have a good question from Teresa. Teresa's question is, how are you measuring program effectiveness at mitigating homelessness?
Indy, can I start with that one and throw it to you? Because
Sure.
mine funnels into you. So Andy mentioned HMIS earlier. All programs or organizations that receive any type of federal funding or United Way funding are required to use HMIS. And when I use the word required, it's the right thing to do, because at any point you can ask me any piece of data, I can give it to you from any of my programs. So having said that, one of our outcome measurements for any of our shelters is increase in income and length of stay. So we can pull that data and show you how stable our families have been. There's also this number that you will hear, and I don't know if Andy and I have ever talked about this before. So Andy, duck. There's this thing called the point in time count, where Housing and Urban Development requires the consortiums to count the homeless. So you will hear me often say, families are the hidden homeless. So we go out for a night. We used to. Now it's done a little differently, but we come up with this number of how many people are homeless in the Midlands, and the numbers will come back that you have this low number of families, and honestly, I think our numbers have been dropping overall. So I caution using that data point for the reason of, I can tell you that I serve almost as many homeless families in our shelters as what will be reported in this data that HUD uses. I personally don't think we will ever be able to count our homeless population because they don't want to be counted. Families specifically are scared they're going to lose their kids to DSS. It is worse than the doctor's form that, when you go in for your physical every year and you have to ask about all your pre-existing conditions. I think it's just hard to get that data. What I would offer is, when we talk about program effectiveness, that HMIS database has access to all of our goals and outcomes and everything that we tell HUD or the United Way we're going to do every year. And it not tracks us, but it helps us report out so you know if we're succeeding. And if we're not, we hold ourselves accountable through self-assessment, and our funders hold us accountable and say, well, hold up, why didn't you increase employability? Why weren't you able to move people to permanent housing, et cetera? So it all goes back to that I call it the database in the sky. Because warm fuzzies are really great, and I can tell you about the kids we serve. I love them, but the bottom line is, you want to know what difference we're making, and that is quantifiable data. So I throw it to you, Andy, because y'all are the ones who maintain it for all of us. So.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Lila Anna said. A couple of additional points, because I know we're short on time. One is one difficulty when you're talking about homelessness is there's different definitions of homeless. Even within the federal government, there's a different definition of homeless. So you have McKinney-Vento, which can be doubled up, that you talk about with school children who may be a part of. And then there's the literal homeless that HUD uses. So there's a lot of different definitions that make it hard to quantify. I think the other thing that United Way has moved to, which thankfully, because of some of the tragic events that have happened over the last few years, is use the word mitigating, which I think is a great word to use when you're talking about effectiveness of programs, is how are you addressing the things that are leading to someone becoming homeless? And United Way has changed their approach to how they're doing evaluation and review of the programs they're serving. They're looking at how they're addressing race equity. They're looking at how they're addressing disparities within the programs that they're working with. They're looking at how many barriers they put in place to individuals to be able to access services. So I say they, United Way, because I'm not really on that end. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we're looking at program effectiveness. And Teresa, I'm happy to talk more detail and send you data that you have interest in to make sure we answer your question fully.
All right, thank you. And I am going to take liberties, but we have about like 1 minute on this question, which I really should have got to sooner. And that is, are United Always United members? What can we do to help? And I know in our pre-discussion, we talked a little bit about, Lila Ann, you talked about advocacy, because I know we can pick up with volunteerism and that kind of things, but just throw out the advocacy for just about a minute, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Dina.
And we did. This was the one thing that we went aha about. Yeah. So here's the deal. We always could use money. We can always use volunteers. Yes. But most importantly, everything Andy and I have talked about is happening because systems are broken. And we on the ground can only do so much to fix those systems. So we have started the conversation. We have data, we have reports. What we need is backup from people in the community who can be educated about the subject and who can speak up and help us get these units created, and help us get the proper programs in place, et cetera. That is my one wish, that we have given you just enough to hook you, and now you'll reach out and get the details.
Yeah, and I think I'll
that's great.
Just follow up on that is understanding the self-sufficiency standards and what it takes to have a livable wage is one tool. But in terms of advocacy, is understanding some of the policies that are impacting affordable housing, specifically here in the Midlands. Lila Anna mentioned earlier, there's so many tax breaks related to building student housing. We need similar tax breaks related to building affordable units, and understanding what it takes to change the policy and direction of some of that. And then doing the work to advocate and speak up on behalf of individuals who don't have time to do the research because they're out trying to live and survive. So, and then just continue to speak up and participate in things like this to learn more and more.
Great. Lila Anna, Andy, thank you both so much. For those of you watching, we will have a series of these Impact Midlands, and we will work to get the information to you to allow you to be effective advocates for United Way in these issues. Dina, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I'm sorry that I'm turning it over to you 4 minutes late.
That is all good. So yes, like Cindy said, we will be doing continuing this Impact Midlands series with a focus on education and a topic that's hitting home in the Midlands as well as health. And so if you are interested in any of those, just keep a lookout on alwaysunited.org for registration details when those events become available. Also, like another thing that Cindy said, if you just happened to find this event and did not register, all these resources that they're talking about, I will be able to send to you, as well as some other books and some other reports and resources that can tell you about self-sufficiency and housing and homelessness in the Midlands. And so if you are interested, all you have to do is email alwaysunited@ua.org, and you can be sent over that list. And if you are just interested in Always United and learning more about our events and being sent emails when the events are up and ready for you to register and participate in, you can sign up at alwaysunited.org, or you can also go on to, you can also email alwaysunited@ua.org as well. And so that being said, bring on Phil, our chair. Hey, Phil, how are you?
Fine, thank you, Adina. I want to make sure that everybody was able to get all the information. You could contact Adina through the website, as she said, for any of this information that you need from follow-up of this. I want to thank Andy and Lila Anna for their time and everything they put into the presentation. I found it most informative. And thank you, Cindy, for moderating this. And we look forward to our next Impact Midlands session. And that being said, thank you all for attending today, and we hope that you found it useful and informative. And we will see you at our next Impact Midlands.